3, 2, 1.
Hey there, you beautiful badass. Welcome to the Carrie Croft Show. I'm your host, Carrie Croft, delivering you stories that get you pumped up and feeling like the unstoppable savage that you are. So grab your coffee, put on your game face, and let's do this thing, baby.
3, 2, 1.
So how many people ask you if it's really worth it to get a haircut by Mia Santiago?
Honestly, a lot. And honestly, it is.
I mean, she is a celebrity hairstylist in Columbus, Ohio. That's all you really need to know.
She doesn't miss, and now she has her own salon, Headspace. It is truly something this city has never seen.
Girl, I did one scalp treatment and I would let Jake put his hands on my head anytime he wanted.
No, same. It's right in Upper Arlington where Mia cuts and styles, and Jake manages a full scalp spa, which is like a facial for your scalp and a massage for all of the stress and tension we hold in our head and neck.
I legit felt like I was on something after I got my first treatment, and my hair looks so much healthier now that all the buildup and dead skin are gone. I mean, I do love massages, but honestly, this might be even better. Plus, it has so many proven benefits for my hair health.
Truly believe you get what you pay for, and Mia and Jake are the dream team.
Use code CARRIE for 20% off your first visit with Miss Mia Santiago. Believe me, I prepare, but I don't like to have notes in front of me because I feel like, but with this, no.
Research,
With Tom, I'm gonna have some notes. Okay, I've got a book, dog-eared. I've got things screenshotted. My chicken scratch. We are going in.
Nice.
How much time you got?
As much as you need.
Fantastic. Well, Tom Turcich, welcome to the Carrie Croft Show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I want to first thank you sincerely for hijacking my life for the last 7 days. I was dreaming of you. I was dreaming of Savannah. I read the book. I engulfed it in 72 hours. But that was just the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Then I'm like, oh, hell. I know, okay, he's on Substack. I'm like, of course I'm going to, subscribe to that. So now I'm down a rabbit hole of your Substack. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm glad you connected with the book. You write it, and it was a lot of my life, and then 2 years of actual writing, and you do as best as you can with it, but you don't know until it's out there, and you hope it connects with people. So it's nice. It has.
Did you have help writing that book? Like ghostwriter?
No, I wrote it myself. I had an editor, but he didn't do much. I mean, he helped me with little sections here and there where kind of maybe I got too attached to a certain section that didn't add much to the story. And he would help kind of give me like another eye, be like, do you really need this? But no, I mean, it's all me. Yeah.
It was fantastic. The way you describe things too, like that did not feel at all like a novice writing. So, I mean, kudos to you. And I hope that you continue to write, because there's a lot of people out there who need to read what you're writing.
Appreciate that.
There's so much here. It did so many things for me. So when I first read it, and I'm like, what am I doing with my life? What have I done? So you took me on a real wild ride in here. So thank you for that. In the book, you'd start talking about your friend Anne-Marie, and her passing in this freak jet ski accident was sort of the impetus for you to be like, oh my God, she is this amazing, kind, wonderful person, and she's gone.
Yeah.
That means the fragility of my existence. Like you were faced with that.
Yeah, Anne-Marie, I mean, that it was impactful on a couple levels, and one of them being that I knew from like childhood that she was way nicer than I was, way more driven, a better student, kind of just better on every level than me, And so then when she died at 17, I was 17, she was 16. When she died, it was, you just think of death intellectually. And it's not until someone close to you dies that you realize, oh, like, this is arbitrary. This can happen at any time, at any moment, to anyone. And so, it forced me to kind of reconcile with how do I integrate this fact that I can die at any moment with living today and living, effectively for the rest of my life.
But you also said that you were always sort of obsessed with death. So even like many years prior to Anne-Marie, so you were 17 when that happened. But when you were little, you used to really sit in this fear of death where you'd lay there
Yeah.
and try to see how still you could get and almost see what it would feel like to die.
Yeah, I remember when I was maybe 8 or so, in my parents' first house, the one I grew up in, running downstairs and like into my mom's arms because I, realized that they were going to die. And they were like, of course, that's a long way off. You don't have to worry about that. And then it came back heavily, these thoughts of death, maybe when I was 14 or 13, something like that. And that's when I was doing what you were just talking about, whereas I would lay perfectly still so I couldn't feel my body. I'd cover my ears so I couldn't hear. And then I would close my eyes so I can see. And then hopefully, try and replicate death. That's what I was trying to do. What is it like to die? What is that experience? But then you're thinking about it. And in death, there are no thoughts. So you can't you just can't, when you're alive, you can't be dead. If you can say it like that. And so that really terrified me. For months, I would try and try and try. And at a certain point, I realized you just couldn't reconcile it. I couldn't fit it in. And so I set it aside, and I was just going to go on whatever train that I was on of life. And then when Anne-Marie died, all those unresolved thoughts and emotions came flooding back, and I had to resolve them. And that's when, I discovered, thankfully, Dead Poet Society. Mm-hmm. And then that led me to Steve Newman and Carl Bushby, who walked around the world, and all the answers that I needed came at kind of the perfect moment.
Yeah. And you mentioned when Anne-Marie passed and all of your friends, it was like the shock of it all, and you guys were all kind of hanging out on someone's yard or something, and you just made note, I didn't cry.
Yeah.
Why did you write that? Like, what was the purpose of you saying I didn't cry? Are you normally someone who doesn't, in a moment like that, is it hard for you to cry?
No, I say I'm the opposite.
Okay.
Yeah, I cry at everything, pretty much. Okay. Especially as the walk went on, I just would cry all the time. Mostly at beautiful things, when something was going really right, or it was just a beautiful day, or, someone shows an incredible act of kindness. Yeah, I cry all the time. But I highlighted that because it really stood out to me at the moment where, this thing that shook me to the core right away, like I knew it was so impactful to me, it didn't affect me in the same way that it was affecting everyone around me. And we're sitting in that circle on Shannon's lawn, and everyone's crying. And I remember feeling like I was a step back and being like, everyone's crying, but I'm not crying. And this is kind of that fog that I talk about in the book, where it kind of knocked me into this fog that I didn't know how to resolve for a few months. I was in that right away. Like as soon as Anne-Marie died, I was just kind of like, whoa, like this can happen. So I think that's why I put it in there, where it just stood out to me that it was affecting me slightly differently than everyone else. Yeah. And I don't know why. I don't know why that is. Maybe it was my obsession with death. Maybe it was that, I had grown up with her, but, my other friends there had grown up with her as well. So I don't know.
So what is it, though, with you that's different that would say, okay, I'm going to walk around the world? Like you said a quirk in your personality. You that's the word you use. But like there's, with some quirk in my personality, once I had decided I was going to walk around the world, the thought of not doing it, you'd rather walk on hot coals than retract on that.
Yeah.
99.9% of human beings, especially at that age, would have just walked to the grocery and come home. Bad idea.
Yeah.
What do you think at the end of the day? What is it?
When I was growing up, my dad used to pay me like $100 to do things, where we had this rope on this massive, I guess it was a sycamore tree in the back of our house. And we had this old shipyard rope. And when I was pretty young, he's like, I'll give you $100 if you climb it. And then I would just spend all day until I, climbed to the top of it. And then he did the same thing. I was in this pogo stick phase, and he's like, I'll pay you $100 if you can go 1,000 times in a row. And so maybe he wore that into me a little bit. But I think I have this personality where I don't care about a lot of things, but then the things I do care about, I care about really deeply. And I also think I take my time on deciding what I care about. And so that's probably a part of it where, I didn't come to the World Walk immediately, and I didn't come to walking around the world like, Anne-Marie dies, I got to do something, let's go on this trip. I had thought about the walk Well, first I had, lived in this fog with Carpe Diem for about 3 months, and then another 3 months deciding, okay, what do I value, what do I want out of life, just theoretically, what do I want out of life? And then once I did decide on the walk, it was that 8 years of, sitting on it and waiting and trying to make it happen for 8 years. So it like really lived in me for a long time. And I guess, you have a lot of ideas when you're young, but that one, I think what it came down to was that it just fulfilled everything I wanted out of life. It had the adventure, had a growth in understanding, and had just traveling. I didn't know anything about the world. I wanted to see the world. And then also, like I said in the book, I didn't have any money. And, that was an effective way to travel with no money.
Yeah. And what makes it more intriguing is that you were in love at the time.
Yeah, that might have added to it as well. Like as the years went on, this idea grew in me. And then I had my long-term girlfriend at the time through college and a little bit after college that I ended things with. And I think that further committed me. When I ended things with her, it was this kind of breaking point in my life where it's like, okay, you're going one way or the other. And once that broke off, then it's okay, you're going to do the walk no matter what, because, the alternative was a very nice life with a person I loved.
And where is she now?
I don't know. I don't talk to her. She's got a few kids. And she lives, I think, in the Poconos. And
no heads up that the book, there's a book where she's does she get a heads up? Like, hey, listen, by the way.
She does the hard cut. She's always done the hard cut.
Oh, really?
Which I respect. And I emailed her a few times. She never returned. So her name's changed in the book. But
got it.
People who know me know who she is. That's not her name.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, no, I figured you'd change most names.
Yeah, most of the names are changed.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So I was trying to put myself in your shoes with this baby stroller, and you're on the road and you're like, especially in the beginning, are you literally in your mind thinking, what the fuck have I done?
No, I'm loving it.
Because at first you're like so pumped, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're like, this is an adventure. This is the greatest thing, even though it's scary. Mm-hmm. There wasn't any like real moments of like, oh God, now what? It's like, let's just go.
No, everything in the beginning, I was so on fire and just excited to finally, after 8 years of saving and planning and everything else, living my dream, that like nothing could have stopped me.
Yeah.
If a thing went wrong, it was just, okay, on to the next one. And I had, of course, you have like highs and lows where you're walking through the cold April rain or whatever, and my hands are just like burning with the cold, and my legs are cramped because it's working these muscles that I didn't really need ever before. I'm not used to walking 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day, but they were all just, it was part of the larger journey, and which is, I think, the great benefit of when you have this really clear vision in anything in life. If you have this really clear vision for a goal, then all these obstacles that would be these mountains normally in your daily life are just part of the process. And you go, okay, that's one small bump on this very large journey to this thing that I'm working towards. And that's how it was in the beginning where, I didn't know where to camp. I didn't know what roads to walk. I didn't have the right gear. I was pushing way too much in my cart. I didn't know who to trust, who not to trust. There's a million things that went wrong, but they were all just like little, bumps in the road that you push through and learn.
What kind of shoes were you wearing?
In the beginning, I had La Sportivas, and they didn't fit quite right. And then I tried probably over that first year, probably 8 different pairs of sneakers, and none of them quite fit right. And then I found Brooks Cascadia, and they fit great and saved my feet from a lot of lost toenails.
Did you do any like pre-working out, or like did you like get yourself in fighting shape for this, or were you like, no, I'm young, I'm just going?
No, I just kind of went. I was an athlete my whole life.
Yeah.
I played college tennis and played sports all my life, but the walking is a different thing. I was not ready for it. I thought it was like, okay, I'm an athlete. Let's go. I'll power through. It'll be fine. But the hip flexors and like the lower back and then the quads, they really, really get worked when you're walking.
So one of the parts of the book that had me totally riveted, there were many, but when you were, I think, in Georgia, is that when you met?
Yeah.
Or was that when you met Rob?
Mm-hmm.
You got to read the book just for this particular story. So you come across this guy that had red flags written all over him. Like I could feel it in my gut. Okay. But still, you like got in the car with him more than once.
Yeah.
Like when you got in the car with him the second time, I'm yelling at you.
I know.
But you know, that's what we do. How many of us do not trust our gut? And it doesn't have to be with some scary guy asking you to come in the car while he's impaired. It's little things in life. It's tiny little moments where you're afraid to say no. You're afraid to speak up. You're afraid to speak your truth. And you literally, I mean, it could have ended a lot differently with Rob.
Oh yeah, very, very much so. It was a bad situation. And what I equated to in the book is that, I grew up in the suburbs, very simple, protected life. I never needed to develop any defense mechanisms, and whereas women, they're getting creepy guys hitting on them all the time. They probably at least have it developed a little bit. And Rob was kind of, coming on to me in a way that I was very slow on the uptake, but then also like I had said like 5 sentences. Why are you so into this right now? And so that's what I in the moment I was thinking, I was like, oh, this is like what women feel like all the time. But I just hadn't developed those defense mechanisms. And also I think societally we have this pressure to be polite like all the time. And you don't want to offend anyone. And you never know, maybe this will come back and bite me or whatever. You just are always erring on the side of over politeness, I think. And what gradually got worn into me when I was walking was that I knew at some point I would meet someone down the line that I would trust immediately. And it took a while to get to that, where I'm just meeting so many people and people would help me. So eventually I learned that if there was something off about someone, even if I was wrong, I didn't care, because I go, all right, whatever. I'm going to meet someone later that I feel great about, and I'll spend time with them. And so I've become very good, maybe too good, at like dismissing people in a certain way. Just because I know like there's a lot of people out in the world and almost all of them are good, but not everyone's for me. And so I've developed now from just living this experience of meeting strangers every day, that it's okay to just say, no thanks. Even if it's a little rude, say no thanks, move on. And then someone offers me something the next day or a week later, and I go, yeah, this sounds great. Of course, I would love to stay at your house because something about you tells me this is totally fine.
It's a vibe.
But Rob was that first test of, you do not have this ready. And the book is all about this growth, this gradual growth. And I think his story really demonstrates the basic test of like safety, of protecting yourself.
Well, you said, I wondered why I found it so difficult to extract myself from a situation I didn't want to be in. And how many people can say that?
Yeah. And it's small. It happens in like small moments where you just don't stand your ground in a certain way. That's not exactly the right phrasing, but you don't find you don't pull up the right fortitude, the
gumption.
The gumption, yeah, because it takes a little inertia to kind of just rip yourself away from it rather than saying these quiet yeses over and over and over again.
Yeah, and you know what? The whole time he saw this 6'2" wiry guy with the baby stroller. He's like, "Oh, he's hot."
Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, "Oh, sure, yeah, I'll come over."
Hey, I'm good people. You look like good people.
Oh, man.
Because it is so true, Catherine. So she was your girlfriend at the time, and when you called her to tell her that, she's like, "Tom, someone who's a good person does not have to tell you they're a good person." And it's so like, I feel like that's so true. Like he's trying to convince himself and you that he's a good person. You're like, okay, let's get back in the car for a minute. It'll be
somehow none of that clicked in the moment.
Spidey senses, Tom. And why not Antarctica?
Well, I did do Antarctica.
You did?
Yeah, I didn't do Australia. So I just planted my feet on Antarctica. I took a boat from Uruguay, or I flew from Uruguay where I had cousins, dropped Savannah there, flew down to Tierra del Fuego, and then took a boat to Antarctica.
So you to like go across? Okay.
No. Would that be like that would take like 2 years of training.
So COVID, that's why you didn't do Australia.
That was it, yeah.
So, and then I started going down a rabbit hole of people. I'm like, has anyone gone across? Of course they have gone across Antarctica.
Have they gone across it?
So I guess
know they've gone to the pole and then back.
I don't know where this guy went, but there's a guy recently that was like the first guy to do something with a sled unmanned. It took him 2 months. I don't know if he went to the pole or where the hell he went.
Yeah.
But regardless,
amazing.
I mean, no, thank you.
I'm also not that kind of adventurer.
No, thank you.
I'm like Carl Bushby, the guy who inspired me.
We're going to talk about, we got lots of dog
He's an
years
adventurer. I'm just like, I'm out for a walk.
No, and see, you're very self-deprecating on that too, which I love about you, because it's like, oh, you know what? I took the like silver sneakers easy path. Like, he's the real hero. I mean, you
still walked a lot.
But I understand.
Yeah.
I mean, what you did was obviously ridiculously exceptional. Let's talk about Carl.
Okay.
Because he was your inspiration. He's pretty much like the impetus, like the reason, not one of the reasons, like a photograph of him, and you were like, okay, it was aspirational.
Yeah.
British ex-paratrooper, badass mofo.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the lessons and one of the things that touched me in the book was this whole idea of serendipity.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was thinking it as I was reading it. This was kind of wild. So I was reading the thing about Carl. You were in South America and you were kind of kicking rocks, banging your head against the wall, trying to be like, okay, I think I can. Some of the excitement's worn off. And you end up in this little restaurant. You go in there and all of a sudden you look up and you see the same photograph of him and realize he was in this same spot and was kind of saved, not, given a warm meal by this
Clemente.
By Clemente.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was incredible. It was at that point, it was probably the lowest point of my walk. Central America was very intense. It was a lot of just trying to survive and kind of a lot happening very fast. But when I got into the deserts of Peru, I had so much time to myself and I was just so bored. It was probably the lowest I was. And like you said, I would sleep in these abandoned houses. And that one morning, I remember just like banging the back of my head against the wall, like, oh my God, I can't believe I've got another day of just nothing ahead of me. It's going to feel like it takes 35 hours to walk these, 24 miles. And then I came to this restaurant at the end of the day, and I see Carl's picture on the far wall. And he had been there in the same restaurant 16 years earlier. And, it was kind of this like full circle moment where I say, the photo brought me to the photo, something like that. But yeah, it was aspirational to, become like this photo that I saw of Carl. And when I was 17, that's what inspired me to, take the first steps and to walk around the world. But then when I finally got to the photo and it was in front of me, it kind of reminded me that I was living my dream and that I was doing something great and that this was fun and I was out there on this adventure. And I think with anything, it's very easy to get wrapped up in the mundane and kind of lose your sense of purpose and, just get bored when you're doing the same thing over and over again. And then especially so when you're in the desert and you're listening to the same podcast over and over again. So yeah, I saw the photo and it was just like, oh yeah, this is incredible. And I am doing the same thing he was doing and that I hope to do.
Yeah.
And it revitalized me in a lot of ways and it energized me. And then from then on, the desert was like this great boon to my joy and I had all this time to think about myself and my influences and everything else. And the book goes into it, but yeah.
Well, and there's a couple parts that I want to note because I loved it. And it's also a testament that you put yourself in positions that create serendipity as well. And you talked about that in one of your blogs, which I was like, so as I was reading this and I was like, oh, wait, that was so serendipitous. Then I moved to your Substack and it was like you wrote exactly what I was thinking in my mind of like, the serendipity and the timing of the universe bringing that to you like, hey, finish it.
Yeah.
Finish it.
Yeah.
But what was even to me as cool as seeing a photo of him was you being able to read these words that he wrote 16 years prior. He said, alone in a badass world, chin straight with just enough money in my pocket to rub 2 pennies together, little food or water. Then stumble out of the desert into this place and find the kindest man on earth, Clemente. God bless you, dear old chap. Fed me like a king, restores my faith in humanity. Pay your respects to this man, people.
Yeah.
I mean, that was exactly, it's like you're walking,
same thing. Yeah.
and I was like, that is so great. And then I took this. I'm like, I have to keep, a screenshot of this in my phone. When he also writes, whatever your plans, go for it. Keep on the road. Drive hard, live it. Rage on, you crazy mothers, you.
Yeah.
I mean, how? And when you said, the color started coming back into my face, I just kept like reading it over and over, like it was giving you life.
Yeah, absolutely. It was my idol at the time, still one of my idols. And I needed it. It was a low point that I needed those words. And he was like a great illustrator too. And he had this fantastic drawing of like him pulling his cart right below that too. It's very clear in my mind.
Are you in touch with him?
Yeah, off and on. Yeah, I've talked to him a few times over the years. He's a badass. But yeah, onto the serendipity portion of it. Serendipity, I think, is like a really underrated virtue. And it's one of the first things I touch on in the book is that it gets washed over with trying to control everything and then boxing yourself in. And that's hand in hand with controlling everything. But when you go out into the world, when you bump into people, when you meet people, when you just like get out of your general habit, like wonderful things can happen. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't always happen. There's weeks when I was out there walking where nothing would happen and I was very bored. And then there'd be another week where it's every day I would meet someone interesting, try some new food, see a beautiful landscape, but you have to go there. You just have to be out there.
You have to put yourself in positions to win, whether it's walking in the world or just getting out and doing something uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And back to your Substack, which I think everyone should subscribe to, and I wouldn't say that about everyone's Substack. Serendipity is fickle, you say, right? The more time, and then you go on to say, the more time you spend outside bumping against things and people, the more beautiful moments are likely to occur, and the more opportunities you'll have to discover how your life intersects with someone else's. And it's so true.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that I think modern society tries to pave over. And there's a lot of benefits to security and, having your nest and your home and feeling very comfortable. But serendipity, I think, is one of like the great joys in life is that you get to meet new people and you get to see where your lives intersect, like I said there. But it's fickle and you can't plan on it. And that's the whole thing about it. You can't expect to go out there. I'm going to go out into the world and this beautiful thing's going to happen. It maybe will, maybe it won't, but you got to do it again the next day and do it again the next day.
Yeah.
And there's also this like, maybe it's more like magnetism, the way like self-help authors write about it is that once you start doing something, you kind of attract whatever you put out there. Serendipity is a similar thing where I think it's just a matter of you begin talking about whatever you're interested in or you're doing the thing you're interested in. And then people see that you're interested or doing this thing. And so then they say, oh, I know someone who is also doing this and they might be able to help you with this. And it's, but again, you just have to be out there. You have to be living and you have to be taking some chances.
Yeah. You described a time when you were in the Atacama Desert.
Yeah.
And the conditions there are not great, to say the least.
Yeah.
But yet, as you painted how, I guess, harsh those conditions were, you also painted a picture of the beauty of the stars and how they sort of engulfed you.
Oh, yeah.
How was that? Like the stars you said were just everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's like life-changing for sure. And if you've never been anywhere in Montana or like a dark sky zone or way up in the mountains where there's no light pollution, you can't really describe it to anyone because the Atacama is the driest desert in the world. There's parts of it that haven't seen rain, they think, in like 10,000 years. And I would go up to these, I think like 3,000-foot plateaus. Maybe it was a little higher than that. You go down in these valleys and you go up to these plateaus. And on the plateaus, at night, you could lay there and like every second more stars would appear. And you could do that forever. Like there's just more and more appear the longer you lay there. And there's so many of them. And the world is so empty and everything is so quiet that they kind of like sit on you. Like the pressure of them sits on you. And they're just reminding you so viscerally that you're nothing. You are so tiny. You're so tiny. And it's different again, like same with, death and Anne-Marie dying. There's a big difference between knowing something intellectually and then feeling it. Because when you feel it, it changes you. when you know something intellectually, maybe you can alter your actions a little bit by this, but it doesn't alter you as deeply as it does when you're actually laying there getting crushed by these things. Yeah, it's incredible.
I'm envious of that experience. Do you think you'll ever go back to that specific place?
I would like to go to Bolivia. I didn't get to Bolivia, and it'd be similar, up in the Altiplano. I could see it.
I read something in your Substack. You were talking about doing a psychedelic journey or doing ayahuasca or something. Did you do that on your walk?
Kind of, yes. I walked down to Lima. A friend visited, and so I was taking a month off in Lima, and I met a guy in Guatemala, in Lake Atitlan, who was studying to be a shaman in Iquitos with this traditional Shipibo tribe. And usually you have to pay a lot to do these excursions. And he's like, you can just jump on with this Romanian group and join me. So I went out there for a week and did ayahuasca a few times.
Guinea pig. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you like it?
Yeah, it was. I'd recommend it to anyone. It's not, I don't think, like a traditional psychedelic where it really alters you. I think what was odd about it, or what was unique about it, was that you're still you, and it's all your same thoughts that you're normally having, but then they become hyper visual. And so you're kind of watching your thoughts from a step back. So in that way, I can see how it'd be helpful if you have PTSD or if you have some trauma that you need to work through, because it allows you to see things away from your emotion without the emotion attached to them. And the way also I describe it is, it's that it feels like when you're falling asleep and you're just starting to dream, but you're still awake. It's like that for like 4 hours, basically, where you're still aware that you're thinking, but everything's visual. It was beautiful. And I came at it at a weird time, I think. Normally, I think you come into the ayahuasca ceremony, kind of, a lot of these people came looking for something, looking for some answer. But I had just walked through the desert for like months and months and months, and I was very calm and at peace with everything. So I was just like, this is good. I'm going to let this take me wherever it takes me. So I don't think it affected me in quite the same way as it affected everyone else. So maybe I'm biased, but it was fantastic, I thought.
So I'd be remiss not to mention your companion on this journey, Savannah.
Yes.
Savannah. I mean, like I said, I cried at the end of your book. Mm-hmm. I mean, I cried a couple of times, but that at the end was just, I mean, your relationship with her was just beyond. But what I actually laughed because I'm thinking in my head, okay, here's this guy. He's maybe 30. He's in the middle of this situation. Well, actually, it was more the beginning of the situation. And you're like, yeah, let's adopt a dog. This would be a good time to train a puppy. You were completely naive to the fact that, like, in some ways you're like, this is a baby, albeit not a human baby, but were you totally naive? You're like, I need protection. I want someone to make me feel comfortable. Let's get a dog. And like, you didn't think it through at all.
No, I wasn't. I wouldn't say I was totally naive. I was more naive to the training. Like, I didn't think it would take so much to train her. And I thought, like my dad, we had this dog growing up, and the dog was so well trained. But I was like a kid when my dad trained the dog, so I didn't really put that together that, this was actually a very conscious thing that he did. And so, I got Savannah when she was a puppy, and I knew to an extent that, look, I'm adopting a baby and that this is going to take a while. But also that was why I adopted her versus another dog, was because I knew she'd grow up on the road and she would know no other life but walking. And that's kind of how it bore out perfectly, where she, after a month in New Mexico, was like, she was a beast, and we were perfectly in sync, like very quickly. And all she wanted to do was walk. We'd wake up in the morning, she's like, let's go. And then at the end of the day, she'd still have energy. I mean, she was perfectly adapted to the road. She loved it out there.
And she knew what you needed.
Oh, yeah.
And what's great about her companionship too, it's like she would never be like, yeah, I'm not feeling that. Or yeah, let's go here. Or it's just this unconditional ride or die.
Yep.
I am here for this.
I was like perfect companion in that way. I remember these days walking the north of Argentina through Santiago del Estero. It's the hottest state in the country. And we were there in, maybe it was May or June. It was very hot. I mean, constant 100-degree days. And we would go through these periods where we'd walk through this heat and just be like, you know, scorched. We'd rest midday, walk later, and then we'd get to a hotel. There's one hotel in particular that was just built. It was a really nice, tiny little mom and pop place, and they had this amazing AC in the room. And we got in this room, and then I think I probably slept like all day. She slept all day, and then we stayed there for another day. So it's like, you know, we were just walking 24 miles for how many days in a row. We came down from the mountains, from the Altiplano, which was very difficult. And then eventually we get to this hotel, and it's just like, okay, now it's time to rest. And she's like, done. I'm good. She gets her twin bed. She lays on the pillow with her, lays on the bed, and so she was always ready to do whatever I was ready to do.
And how is the grieving process for you currently after her passing?
Ready to elevate your self-care game? Boss Gal Beauty Bar is a modern med spa offering everything from cosmetic injectables, lasers and microneedling to medical-grade facials and skincare. Conveniently located in Clintonville, Grandview, Powell, and Easton, making self-care a priority has never been easier. Use code CROFT for $25 off your first visit. We all know the age-old joke, why did the chicken cross the road? Well, in this day and age, cool chicks cross the road to make their way to SZN, a groovy little boutique in downtown Powell, Ohio. Located at 37 South Liberty Street, SZN offers curated apparel, accessories, and gifts from purpose-driven brands. Stop in and listen to Tara's story and the stories of the brands sold within the shop. Ask her why a hen is Zen, and receive four-legged greetings from Wally, the small and mighty shop dog. At SZN, your purchase has a bigger purpose. Mention the awesomeness that is the Carrie Croft Show and receive 20% off your total purchase.
Yeah, it was very bad for a while, and now it's more just kind of like, man, I just miss her, wish she was here kind of thing. But I think it was particularly difficult, well, because we spent every minute of every day together for years and went through a lot together. And then also we had this relationship where, she would kind of protect me at night. She helped me sleep at night, because if someone was coming, she would bark. But for the most part, it was me protecting her from, the general meanness of the world, especially in some countries are friendlier to dogs than others. And some people can be mean to dogs. Other dogs are mean to dogs. And, just the world. Like, I was her dad in a way, or, and her best friend and whatever it was. But I'm looking out for her. And so I had this really deeply ingrained defensiveness towards her and protectiveness towards her. And then I couldn't protect her. And I was just like, devastated by that.
Do you know the book? Yeah, I'm sure you do know the book. Do you know the book, As a Man Thinketh?
No, I don't know.
You don't?
No.
James Allen. It's called As a Man Thinketh. And there's a quote in it that I absolutely love. And it reminds me so much of when you said you basically had thought all of your thoughts.
Yeah.
So this is the quote. Now I have to get you that book, by the way. A man's mind may be likened to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If no useful seeds are put into it, then an abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their kind.
That is amazing. Do I say that in the book? Do I talk about the garden in the book?
You do.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
and so it clicked with me immediately where I'm like, he is so right about that. You had mentioned, and it was farther along in your walk, and you were kind of meditating, walking, you realize I have thought all of my thoughts. And then you use the analogy of a garden. What was that like?
Well, I mean, it's the way I thought about it was like, it's like weeding a garden where you don't even realize, I think walking does this to you in a way that nothing else does. And I think it's a very evolutionary, physiological, where you just work through things that you realize you didn't need, that you didn't even know existed. And things get covered up. But then when you start walking, you're just kind of on your hands and knees and you're pulling weeds all day. Okay, pull this one. Think about my dad this way. Okay, think about this relationship. Okay, how did this affect me? How did this affect me? And you're just doing that all day in the background, happening. And then after a year and a half of walking, I'm in the desert, and you kind of looked around and you go, oh, like there's no weeds to pull. Yeah, everything's clean, and now I can plant whatever I want. And it's really beautiful because it's incredibly peaceful and it's very quiet, and you lose this kind of like constant vibration of, just like something's a little off. You lose that. You're just kind of steady, which is incredible. And then, like I say in the book, and it's I think in the book it's kind of light touch, but we're laying under the stars and thinking, okay, you're nothing. You're totally empty. What do you plant, basically? And then when I thought about it, you think everything is basically in the pursuit of happiness. And this is not like incredibly profound, or it's not an incredibly new idea, but you want shelter to be happy. You want money, in theory, to be happy. You want power and renown to, in theory, be more content, to have more power, to be happy ultimately. That's like the only currency of man. And this creature that doesn't last, the memory of you is going to be forgotten very soon. You're gone. So the only thing you can leave, the only thing that you can strive to leave is your own happiness, and then try and make the world a little bit happier. And it's very vague, and how do you define happiness? A lot of it, I think, is just embracing like our flawed psychology and our own humanity, not trying to be these automatons of productivity, and, do the best you can in that.
Do you think happiness is a steady state, a fluid steady state, or do you think it's things that happen here and there?
No, there's definitely ups and downs, but I think you can be like more joyful in your life on average than someone else, for sure. I mean, and depends on the thoughts that you're thinking. And it's not easy to change your thoughts, but even like cognitive behavioral therapy, it's like that is proven, like clinically proven to be effective in mitigating depression or, other ailments. So there is something to be said about altering your thoughts, but it's not easy. And then also say you begin therapy, or you begin really trying to like self-actualize and change yourself for the better at 21. We have 21 years of wiring, basically, that you're trying to undo, and you're never going to undo it perfectly. But I think you can be happier it depends on, how you talk to yourself. That's a big thing. And how much grace you give yourself, which is a difficult thing to do. And another thing where easy to understand intellectually, but to understand emotionally, I think you just have to live a lot and realize that everyone is kind of screwed up and gets, one lot one way or the other. So yeah, I do think you can. I do think you can be happier. But generally it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, no, it does.
Yeah.
It does. I feel like it escapes people.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
real-
this also put a lot of pressure on it that like, I have to be happy all the time. It's like, you will never be happy all the time. When I was walking around the world, that's probably the happiest I'll ever be, living with nothing. Every day was just constant newness. But there were I would go through these very clear bouts of just emotion where there would be days, at least once a month, like 3 days in a row, I would just be pissed at everything for no reason. I just hate everything. People come up to me, they're very nice. I'm just like, leave me alone. I want nothing to do with you. I'd be cursing at the sky, sore, tired. I got a great campsite. Who cares? This sucks. And then, a week later, I'd have 3 days where nothing could go wrong. And you're, perfectly happy.
Yeah.
And, every sunset is beautiful. But so I think it just goes to show that, you just ebb and flow naturally. But the baseline, I think, could be raised.
Yeah. So another point that I loved, and I don't know if this is in the book, but I read it in one of your Substacks, was about being reckless, the recklessness.
Yeah.
And it really struck me. And what you said is, life is coming for you. Regardless of your path, you will love, learn, make mistakes, have your heart broken, fall down, get up, and persist to the light when you're in the dark. Most of us handle our lives with the gloved hands of a fearful antique dealer, which I love that line. We cover ourselves in bubble wrap. We find a neat box and set ourselves in it. We refuse to quit the job that's crushing our soul or end on the on-again and off-again relationship that's been draining us emotionally. We refuse to pick up a paintbrush or put down a word because what if we fail? What if we uncover that we really aren't all that talented or clever? Let me get this out of the way. No one is.
Yeah.
So carpe diem, like back to that. Have some reckless abandon around what you're going to do in life. At the end of the day, do you really want to be sitting in bubble wrap going, oh, I wish I would have done this? No.
Yeah.
But how many people care so much about what they think? Or it's tragic, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think you're a complete walking, talking, living, breathing example of how you can just unabashedly go out and live your most authentic existence, regardless of what anyone thinks or says.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's incredible.
Yeah, the idea of recklessness, I think, is for me, it's very valuable because I think people believe, if they live longer, there's more value in that. Which I would love. I would love to live forever. Like I enjoy being alive. I'm having a great time, and I'd love to be able to say, okay, I'm going to live 1,000 years, and then I go, okay, then I'm done with it. I think that'd be great. I know not everyone agrees with that. Most people don't agree with that, I don't think. But when death comes and it's all over, you don't take anything with you. And whether you die like Anne-Marie at 16, whether you die at 77, when it's over, it's over. And so you already know the end. But what is the middle? That's what you have to control. And you can either sit inside and try and protect yourself. And it's also very, that protection, that subtle bubble wrap, that gloved hand of the antique dealer, it's not like this big decision that you make. It's very subtle, everyday kind of, well, hey, this is nice, I do this. And you're kind of putting these thoughts or these hopes on a shelf somewhere instead of just saying, I'm going to take this out and I'm going to break it. And I'm going to take another one and I'm going to break it and I'm going to try again and do it again and do it again. So again, it's the same thing with that politeness. It takes a little bit of inertia to break out of that everyday sleepiness that you're in. But yeah, if you can, I think your life benefits from a lot and you get a lot more satisfaction if you can live, a life that is aligned with your values. But it takes a little bit of recklessness and, that willingness to fail in the direction of your dreams.
So you mentioned a couple minutes ago, that's probably the happiest you'll ever be.
Yeah, probably.
Do you think?
I mean, unless I have a kid, probably, yeah.
Yeah, then you'll be, let me tell you something. Once you have a kid, you'll be like, and I thought walking through the desert for 200 days was hard. Okay? It's a different kind of hard. Like, it's beautiful, but man, is that going to be I've thought about that a lot of times. I picture you and Bonnie and settling down and you being at the park and having this family and just knowing like how beautiful that is and how planted there.
Yeah.
How you will never feel more tethered than when you have a child.
Yeah, makes sense.
Does that scare you at all? Or are you just like, you know what? I'm ready for it. Like that's the next adventure and I'm ready for whatever the perils of parenthood are.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready for parenthood, but I think the idea of being in one place, I'm more ready for. I've already lived my dream, the big dream, and Bonnie's work. She has to be in one place, and hopefully it'll be Philadelphia eventually, where all my family is. But I think I was able to satisfy that really what I thought was insatiable urge to be out there through the world walk. And now I'm a little more settled. Maybe I'm just a little older as well. And maybe, it had just worn out of me a little bit. But no, I think I'm ready in a certain way to be in one place. But there's also, when I travel now, it's not as satisfying as the walk was. And I've done a few trips and, it's kind of a bummer, for me that I can't travel and get this really deep connection with a place like I did when I was walking. When I was walking, I go through, little villages and towns and I'm meeting just people. And everything was every interaction I had was very authentic. And now when I travel, it's like, okay, you're in, even if you don't intend to be, you're probably in a more touristy place and you're doing slightly more touristy things, and you kind of feel like you're there to take something from this place rather than just letting it pass through you. And you don't gain that same sense of growth, you know, that you do when you spend 3 months walking across the country. And so I think I'm a little more jaded in my traveling now. And so I think that probably tethers me a little bit as well.
Yeah, re-entry's been a little turbulent for you.
Yeah, very much so, I'd say. Yeah.
And so the one blog I found that made me laugh, like I'm going to tell you.
This would be good.
I chuckled. And I think the name of the blog was Unfinished Ramblings.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
So, and I wasn't expecting it, but it tickled me.
Yeah.
So you start talking. Well, so, you know, and I had read your thoughts on just walking in general in America and the driving and the parking lots and the parking garage. I mean, it really is, especially for someone like you who has seen the world and how people do it different. It has to be, you know, kind of cringy. Or you just kind of like, why are we doing it that way? But anyway, you're like, I just need to get this down on paper. Cincinnati is not a city. And it was like a spit out my coffee moment. And then you go on, because a lot of people would disagree with that on the surface. Yeah. But then you go in to explain it. And for someone who's been to Cincinnati, I was like, well.
Yeah, I mean, it's like this flaw with American cities that, you know, they call them cities, but anywhere else in the world, it doesn't have any of the characteristics of a city because 80% of the population lives in the suburbs, and then that's basically their downtown. It's like this expansion of the main street is this downtown Cincinnati or wherever it is. And there's some exceptions. I think like Seattle, Philly is like an old city, so it has a lot more density. But yeah, when you like after traveling for so long, you know, the great benefit of traveling is that you get to see how other places do things. And there's some really great cities in the world where every corner you turn, there's something new and there's a new little shop and people are out walking and it's quiet. And you're like, whoa, cities can be quiet and it's not just cars honking and it's not really hot and because there's asphalt everywhere. And that's been one of the more difficult things with settling down in the U.S. is that, you know, Bonnie's work, she's at University of Cincinnati. You know, and if I had my druthers, I'd be in Philadelphia with my family and friends, but then also just for the walkability part of it. And Cincinnati we live in probably the most walkable section of it, and I can ride my bike and I don't have a car. But even getting up here to Columbus today, it's like there's no train. You can't just like hop on a train and get here. It's all these little infrastructure things in America that kind of drive me crazy. But yeah, I mean, Cincinnati's very nice, and
hey, no shade, Cincy, we love you.
Yeah, no shade on Cincy. It's very nice and it's very peaceful, and I have a bunch of pickleball courts across the river that I can go play at. It's fantastic.
Tom's he's just having some re-entry issues. Okay?
Re-entry issues, yeah.
Because he also, well, listen, Cincy, if you feel bad, he also called Columbus was an archipelago. Is that what's that word?
Archipelago?
Archipelago of highways. And
yeah,
I was like,
that's a lot of cities.
Listen, and you know, I love Columbus, but you're not wrong.
Yeah, that's a lot of cities in America.
But you're like, it really is a lot of highways around that are all under construction.
Yeah. And yeah, that just like destroy these neighborhoods and truncate places. And, you know, I remember when I got to Denmark. So like the first 2 years I was walking through the Americas and I was really traumatized by cities because they're so loud and they're so busy and it's just like, it was a lot. And then I'm walking Ireland and I would go into these cities with like this physical manifestation of stress. Oh my God, I got to get ready for this. And then it would just be like a pedestrian walk for like a mile through the city and all these shops. And you know, actually this is like pretty nice. But then it wasn't really until Copenhagen. When I got to Copenhagen, I spent a week there with my friend and she had a son, or, you know, one son at the time, she's 3 now, but we just rode around on our bikes and we got coffee and then we go to the park, we ride over there and then we get a beer. And I was like, oh, like it's not cities that are stressful. It's all the cars that are loud and polluting and making it hot and making it dangerous where you really have to think about just crossing the street or, you know, walking along the sidewalk, whatever it is. It's like this constant stress that's going. And when those aren't there, like in Copenhagen, it's like, this is like an adult playground. Like, this is amazing. I'm like, you're riding around. Everyone else is having a good time. They got their groceries out, and it's like this is fantastic. And if you think about it, no one let's think of like the car's ideal landscape is the highway. You don't want to spend any time on a highway. You're not going to stand there and go, oh, this is a great spot. But people they go into debt to go to Disney World, and there's no cars there, and it's a walkable city, and they leave their terribly unwalkable city to spend thousands of dollars to pretend like they live in a walkable city. And so America just screwed this up where, it's all about this. When you're at home, it's efficiency. And you go this spot, this spot, this spot, and take out all the joy from anything of the in-between. And when you lose that in-between, you lose the serendipity. You go, I'm going to go to the gym, and I go to the gym, and you see your gym friends. Hello, gym friends, da, 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 da. And then you go back and go, okay, now I need to go to my office. And I go to the office, these are my office friends, da, 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 da. And you don't have any of this like natural flow of life and color and running into people. And the things that make life worthwhile is not sitting in a car and not boxing everything off. That's not how life is meant to be living. It's not how we get joy.
Man, drop the mic, Tom. Seriously, that was real. You're right. And that Disneyland thing, I'm like, you're really, really right about that.
Yeah, it's.
Were you pissed off you had to drive here? You're like, damn this car.
I was kind of.
Damn this car. You could have gone, you should have started walking here. Like, it would take
I
you
thought
what?
about riding my bike, but I didn't have time. It didn't work out.
So you would, of course. I'm like, of course you'd ride from Cincinnati to Columbus.
Yeah, it would be fun. It'd be fun.
Oh, it'd be a blast.
Yeah.
It'd be a total blast.
Yeah,
Didn't you say Denmark would be your ideal place to live?
Yeah, Denmark or even France, I think. There's a couple places, but yeah, Denmark I really enjoyed. It's very peaceful. You get good health care. People have a great education, but they barely go to school, and it sounds great.
And so Bonnie, you met Bonnie in the last leg of
Yeah.
your walk, and you guys recently got engaged.
That's right,
In Paris.
In Paris, yeah.
So
One of the
how
few direct
romantic.
flights from Cincinnati.
I know.
Randomly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Was it like, give me a little, give us a little peek into the
Yes,
engagement?
I surprised her, and it was really tough. I tried for months to get her any days off. Her schedule's crazy. You can only plan it a month in advance. Eventually, I found out she had this elective and that she could work from home. And then I had a friend confirm that she could really work anywhere. It wasn't like she had to be in Cincinnati. And so then I was like, once I found that out, booked the flight, and then told her, yeah, we're going somewhere, cold weather. I helped her pack. And then we got to the airport, and she thought we were going to the Jersey Shore or to Chicago or something. She didn't know. And then, it says Paris on it. And it was just like a 7.5 hour flight to Paris. And we spent 6 days there and I proposed, got engaged under the Eiffel Tower, had some champagne afterwards, a wonderful meal. And, I'd never been to Paris before. I walked around it. I generally avoided cities when I was going because it was just more stressful to walk through, and you have to get hotels. You can't sleep in a park. And so I went right around Paris, and I'd never been there, and it's her favorite city. So kind of worked out for both of us. She was able to go to her favorite place. I was able to see a new place. We did the mother sauce making class. We did a croissant class. So it was great.
I mean, you're just a hopeless romantic, aren't you, Tom?
Yeah, definitely.
Is there anything else brewing? Because I know you said I already did my big thing.
Mm-hmm.
But is there anything else that's like maybe getting cooked up in that kitchen?
Yeah, there's things on the fire, I would say, but nothing like the World Walk. That was the big one thing. But no, I'm playing around right now. This is the first time since 17 that I haven't had a really pinpoint focus on what I want to do. It was the walk, and then it was the book. So no, I'm kind of playing around with it. I'm not exactly sure.
Give me a hint of something.
We'll see. I don't know. There's a lot of ideas in there. I'm waiting for one to rise above the rest.
Well, so I know you did say that you were toying around with like a science fiction book at one point.
Yeah. I've written a bunch of bad science fiction books and just put them on the shelf, kind of thing. But maybe I'd redo that.
I could see you being an author in your horizon.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how this book sells. But I love writing. Been writing for years, and have a lot of book ideas, and it's just very time consuming, and there's very little money in it. So, it's something I think I'll always do because I enjoy, and if I can make a living out of it. But Yeah, I get like every book is kind of like has to be kind of a pinpoint focus thing, and I'm waiting for maybe one idea to rise above that I can focus on.
Okay. All right, Tom.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
And if you're still out there following your girl, follow me on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, run to your Google machine, type in The World Walk, or go to Amazon, buy this book, subscribe to this guy on Substack. He is so talented, so insightful, and I promise you, you will not regret it. And keep moving, baby.
Thanks. Nice.
3